Psalm 2. And Psalm 2 presents us with a great opportunity. Okay, I wonder if anyone can tell me. Well, actually, let me tell you about something that's happening fairly soon first that's relevant for this. That is AJ. Anyone know who AJ is? Anthony Joshua. He is fighting Andy Ruiz in June. Okay, now this is, for anyone that doesn't know, if you don't follow boxing, I imagine everyone follows boxing. But if you didn't for some bizarre reason, then you need to know Anthony Joshua, he is like the number one heavyweight in the world at the moment. He holds 4 belts, okay? And he's fighting Andy Ruiz, who's ranked number 15. Okay, so, and, you know, for all intents and purposes, this is going to be a walkthrough for Anthony Joshua. Although, as anyone who knows anything about the heavyweights knows, if anyone can get in that ring, they can punch. Which means that Andy Ruiz has a puncher's chance of beating AJ. But the odds are stacked against Ruiz. Now, I know that you're not betting people, but if you was, just imagine you got some inside information that completely changed the odds. So you find out just before the fight, no one else knows this, Anthony Joshua has fairly severe food poisoning. And he realises he's in really bad shape. And he knows his only chance of beating Andy Ruiz is if he gets a knockout in the first round. So he's going to go for it hell for leather in the first round. Now, not only do you learn that, but you also find out something else that Anthony Joshua doesn't know. He doesn't know that Andy Ruiz does know that he's got food poisoning, right? So now Andy Ruiz, he knows all he's got to do is avoid getting hit in the first round. Now I reckon I've got a good chance of avoiding getting hit because I can run fairly fast and I just keep low. So there's a good chance. So suddenly the odds, they're all in AJ's favour. They're stacked heavily against Andy Ruiz. But if you put, £10 on there, you're thousands in, right? And so what are you going to do? You're going to take the opportunity? Well, maybe you're just not a gambling person, but you get the point. I wonder if if anyone can tell me, apart from Gemma, who wrote these lyrics. Look, if you had one shot or one opportunity... Sorry? Eminem, yeah, listen to this. Look, if you had one shot or one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment, would you capture it or just let it slip? Okay? That's a great question, isn't it? If you had one moment, one opportunity to get everything you ever wanted, would you seize that opportunity or would you let it slip? Listen, this morning, the psalmist gives us an opportunity. A real opportunity. The question is, are we going to just let it slip or seize the opportunity? But just like that little scenario with Anthony Joshua and Anthony Ruiz, there's some information, some inside information you need to know to seize the opportunity. And that's what Psalm 2 gives us. It begins, so we're going to unpack it. Why do the nations conspire and the peoples plot in vain? This is where the psalm begins. It begins, the psalmist, whoever wrote this psalm, almost certainly was David. Well, it was David. In fact, we know it was David because we're told that in the book of Acts. But when David wrote this psalm, here's what he does. He nails every one of us. He nails us completely. He says, look at the question again. Why do the nations conspire and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth rise up and the rulers band together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their chains and throw off their shackles. He nails us. Now you might think, well, that doesn't really speak about me. Well, what does it speak about? He says, why do the nations rage? The question is, why do the kings rise up and the rulers against the Lord and his anointed? And here's what they say. They're opposing God and his anointed one, that means his king. And here's the reason why. Here's what they're after. Here's what they're after. Let us break their chains and throw off their shackles. Isn't that the cry of every one of our hearts, or it has been, right? Wanted to be free of God. Don't want a God shackling me. Don't want a God telling me what to do. Most people reject God not because it's hard to believe that there is a God so much, but because they want what they would call freedom. They want to be free of God. If any of you have ever sort of got into this at an intellectual level, you'll perhaps have heard of the various atheists and fairly famous ones. A man called Christopher Hitchens. He wrote a book about God being like Big Brother, watching us all the time. How we want to be free of this, you know. And that's how many people see God. That's how we've all seen him. Like even if you're a believer this morning, maybe you feel like God has shackled you and taken away your freedom. There's a part of you that would like to be free of God. And if you're not a believer here this morning, here's my question for you. Why? Isn't it because you want freedom from God? Is it because you think, I don't want those shackles? I don't want God telling me what I can do and what I can't do? The psalmist nails all humanity. This isn't a problem just for this in this country. It says, why do the nations? Wherever you go, all over the world, every nation is the same. And it's, sometimes we can say, well, various countries are under dictatorships, it's just the kings. No, it's the kings and the rulers and the nations. Everyone wants to be free of God. That's the cry of the nations. But there's a problem with this, a massive problem. And the problem is revealed for us in verse 4. It says, the one enthroned in the heavens laughs. The Lord scoffs at them. He rebukes them in his anger and terrifies them in his wrath, saying, I have installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain. The one enthroned laughs. Do you know what? When I was preparing this message, I was sitting in the office preparing the message, and a little spider ran across the table. And it was one, I think it was, I can't remember what sort it was, but it was one of these jumping spiders, really moved fast, the ones? It was about this big, tiny. And the temptation as he darted across the desk was just to squash him. But I didn't. No, I didn't, Sheila, it's all right. And so I thought I'd just sort of brush him onto the floor. And as I went to brush him, do you know what he did? He reared up. Have you ever seen spiders do that? They lean back on their back legs and they lift up and they bare their fangs. I mean, his fangs are so tiny, I couldn't see them. And I thought, that's amusing, So I just tapped my finger in front of him and there he was, rearing up as if he was going to take me on, right? And so I tapped the other side, he turned around and he did the same. It was quite amusing. I wish I'd filmed it because it was absolutely brilliant, okay, really good. Now, it's like this little spider, my finger in front of him, he was just small compared to the tip of my finger. And get the picture, this spider grabbing my finger and lifting him up and throwing me on the floor and then doing it again like some sort of superhero spider. I mean, the idea of it, you're laughing, is ridiculous, isn't it? It's ridiculous. That a tiny little thing, I could have just at any moment, there it was, rise up yeah, really? Yeah, any time, just like that. And when it says the Lord laughs, it's not like it's not that he's laughing at us as if it's funny, but it's laughable. It is laughable that the nations think that even together, that they could somehow rise up against God. The difference between that little spider and me is nothing compared to the difference between the nations and the kings and all their power and God. You know, that spider has far more chance against me than the nations against God. That's the reality. And so when he says the one enthroned in heaven laughs, it's saying this is laughable. It's ridiculous. It's madness, absolute madness. The thing that makes it so laughable is this. The difference between the spider and the nation is this. That spider's not, it's stupid, really, isn't it? It can't think things through. That's not the case for the nations. They're not stupid. And yet, they think they can somehow rise up, resist, overcome, dismiss God. It says he laughs at them. The Lord scoffs at them. The word, it means derides them, ridicules them. It's ridiculous, worthy of ridicule. Now look, just notice this. So in the NIV it says, the one enthroned in heaven laughs, the Lord scoffs at them. That's what he's doing now. It's like, for him it's laughable and it's ridiculous. That's his view of the nations now, right at this present time. But it doesn't stop there. It says, he rebukes them in his anger and terrifies them in his wrath. A better translation is the ESV, the NASB backs this up as well. And that puts it like this. Then he will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury. Then, not now. In other words, there's a time coming. At the moment, it's laughable in God's eyes. It's ridiculous what the nations are doing. But then there is a time coming, hasn't come yet, when he will speak to all the nations, to all the kings and all the rulers. Then he's going to speak. And when the moment he speaks, in a way that everyone will be clear, in that instant, all the confidence of the nations, all that arrogance will vanish just like a bit of vapour. It will just drain out of them any courage that they thought they had. All their arguments, all their clever arguments and all their problems, all their questions that they got with God, all of that will just disappear the moment God opens his mouth and speaks. When they hear the voice of God, it will settle all arguments and all questions. As it says of Job, when God spoke to Job, he put his hand over his mouth. There was nothing that he could say. Then he will speak to them, not just speak to them, in his wrath. So this is a coming judgment. God's speaking to them in judgment. This is what's coming. Now, for those of us this morning that believe, we need to bear this in mind. Because we can forget. And we can become so much like the world, pursuing all the things of the world, enjoying the things of the world, because it's like we've entered into salvation, and here's what we do: we close the door behind us. That is not the way it's meant to be. And we live alongside these people who are in rebellion against God, and we, for the most part of the time, treat it just casual. And again, for any of us, if we've not made our peace with God yet, there is a day coming when he is going to split the mountains with his voice. It says on that day, that's what's going to happen. The earth will quake, and he will speak. He will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them. Like I say, all confidence gone, they will be filled with terror. And what will he say? Here's what he's going to say. I have installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain. Now, why is that so terrifying? I was trying to think how I could illustrate this. And just imagine you work, let's say in a factory or in an office situation, whatever, it doesn't really matter. And there are certain aspects of the work that you don't like. All right, so there you are, and there's lots of people around you, and you're all of the same mind. Everyone tries to get out certain jobs and happy to do certain things, but trying to clock out early and all that kind of business. But there's one person, one of your colleagues, is always saying, look, come on, you've got work to do. Stop skiving off. If you've ever worked in a factory, you have a name for someone like that. We used to call them brown noses or brown tongues, and it meant they were so far up the boss's rear end, is how we used to call it. That was the name they were given. They're generally despised and disliked in the workplace. And so imagine there's this person constantly reminding you that, look, you shouldn't be going yet, and you haven't done that properly. And then get this, they're not just reminding you, but they're encouraging you to do it. And when you don't do it, they're doing it for you. And you end up just despising this person. Everyone talks about them badly. They're pretty much frozen out of all the friendship circles. And then you hear that the company director is retiring and there's going to be a new director. And you go into work, it's the new day, new director, you've not met him yet. The new director comes walking onto the factory floor with his suit on, and it's this colleague. The one that has been in your midst, that you've been bad-mouthing, that you've mocked, that you've ignored, that he's seen all of your failings, and all of a sudden you think, oh, flippin' heck, he's the boss. And then you hear the boss's son has got the job. He was your previous boss's son. It's like all of a sudden you realise you're in trouble, right? Your job now is on the line. However bad it was, it's not going to be any better now, that's for sure. That's kind of what it's like. He's saying, I have installed my king in Zion. He's installed his king. And it goes on to say, then he will speak to himself saying, I've installed my king on Zion, my holy hill. I will proclaim the Lord's decree. He said to me, you are my son. Today I've become your father. So God installs his king. He says, I've installed my king. The nations will be terrified at that. That's the beginning of the terror. But then he says, you are my son, today I've become your father. Now, so the king's boss, God has installed his king. But the king it is who speaks next. So just to watch, follow the psalm, the nations rage against God. God, at this time, looks at them and it's laughable and ridiculous. But in the future, he's going to speak and inspire terror and fear in the hearts of everyone when they hear the voice of God speak. And he will say, I have installed my king. And then the king, whom he has installed, will speak. And the king it is, who is the Lord Jesus, says, I will tell the decree. I will proclaim the Lord's decree. So the king says, Jesus will say, I will tell you what God has said. He has said, you are my son, today I have become your father. This, ask of me, and I will make the nations your inheritance, the ends of the earth your possession. This king, who he's already been installed, it's just been revealed in no uncertain terms to all the nations. God says to him, if you ask me, I will give you all the nations, everything. In other words, this one that the nations are rebelling against, all of them are going to come under his lordship. Nobody, not a single person, gets to escape outside of his lordship. Every single knee will bend. Every head will bow. Everyone will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father. All the nations of the earth. There'll be no questions and no doubt. But then he speaks more. Verse 9. This king, God says to this king, you will break them with an iron rod. You will dash them to pieces like pottery. You know, this is a terrifying statement. God says that this king will shatter the nations. Now think again of that rebellion. The rebellion of the nations. God's saying that, yeah, they can rebel now, but they're like clay pots. And when the Lord comes in judgment, it will be like a clay pot meeting with a crowbar. The resistance, there will be no resistance. They'll be shattered to pieces, it says. You will break them with a rod of iron. You will dash them to pieces like pottery. This is saying that the nations, all the peoples, that your friends, family, loved ones who don't know the Lord, maybe you are going to be utterly devastated. Utterly devastated. And I was thinking, you know, this doesn't mean just squash, like if I was to squash that spider. If I squash that spider, that's the end of the spider. No, this isn't that. Because it's not the end. It's the devastation of your soul. It's the devastation of millions and millions of souls. I babysat with George yesterday for Jasmine and Shane, our son-in-law and daughter, while they went to a funeral. And some of you have heard that two members in the church, 25 years old, sadly reversed off of a side of a mountain to their deaths. So they had the funeral yesterday. 1,000 people at this funeral. And Jasmine said, she said, you know, it was of all the people there, Millie's mum, Millie's the girl that died, she was just, you could see she was broken and devastated. You know what she means by that? Sometimes you can see in a person, can't you? They've been devastated. Devastated. And the thing is, for Millie's mum, is the devastation that she's experiencing right now, and it's got to be devastating, isn't it? She knows. Yeah, she's sung songs of joy and worship because she knows that her daughter is with the Lord and she's going to see her daughter again. It is devastating. But this devastation is far worse. It's far worse. This is devastation that there will be no recovery. None. There's no hope. None. In the devastation that is coming upon, as far as I can tell, my eldest daughter, maybe they're family members for you, a terrible devastation is coming. That's what it's saying. They will be, it's, you know, like an iron rod. You know, it's just judgment. And this morning, remember I've said, we have an opportunity. When opportunity knocks, are you going to take it? This is what's happening. This is what's going to happen. And then we come to verse 10. And here's the point and the purpose of God revealing all this. Therefore, you kings, be wise, be warned, you rulers of the earth. Now, it addresses the kings because the kings influence the people. And they're representatives of the people. This means everyone. Okay? It says, the first thing is, you kings, be wise. You know, think about that little spider again, right? I mean, I would always encourage people that it's more important to be courageous than strong. Okay? You know, if you're facing something you're strong, well, of course you're going to overcome it. But if you're weak, it takes courage, doesn't it? There's a lot more nobility in courage. Courage is a great thing. But that little spider, that wasn't courageous. That was stupid. Right? He wasn't wise. Okay? We want to be courageous, but we must first be wise. He says, you kings, be wise. Be warned. This morning, what we've heard is a warning to be heeded. It's also, incidentally, for those of us that believe, a warning to make known. People need to hear this. It's a warning. Be wise in the light of all this. Take heed the warning. Take it to heart. Believer this morning, take it to heart. Yes, you may know that you've got confidence about your salvation, but take this to heart for those that don't yet know the Lord. And here's what we are to do. Rather than be in rebellion against him, like that foolish spider, serve the Lord with fear and celebrate his rule with trembling. There's a strange selection of words there, isn't it? Serve with fear and rejoice with trembling. And what that means is this: serve with fear. It doesn't mean this God who's so terrifying you better serve, and if you put a foot wrong, that is it. It doesn't mean that. When it says serve with fear, I don't know if anyone's seen The Lion Whisperer. Anyone seen The Lion Whisperer? Yeah? Okay. I was hoping to show you some images of it, but The Lion Whisperer is this guy. He is amazing with lions, right? He breaks all the rules. You're not meant to look lions in the eye. He does. You're not meant to get down on their level. He does. You're not meant to lay down on the floor. He does. He is like they love him. The lions love him. And you see these lions, they just come out of the savannah running up to him. He calls them. They jump on him, they play fight with him, and he's laying there, he's rubbing their tummies. It's amazing to watch. You think, wow, how amazing is that, right? You can imagine it, can't you? There's one picture where he's riding this lion, he's actually on its back. You see him get on it, the back of the lion doesn't even do that. It's just so strong and powerful. And there he is. Now the thing is, it's like, there he is having an amazing time with these lions. But that lion is still to be feared. That lion at any moment, that is a powerful creature. It could tear him to pieces in a moment. And he has to bear that in mind. He needs to read the signals from the lions, doesn't he? Because if he was to get that wrong, it's buttons down. And that's kind of what this is saying. Serve the Lord with fear. Rejoice with trembling. Yes, just like he rejoices in these lions, but still there's an awareness of the power. And we are to serve the Lord. We're not serving our friendly pal, our next door neighbour. God is dangerous. Yeah, we don't want to, he's not a small thing. He is awesome. Yeah, lions are nothing at all compared with the power and the majesty and the magnificence of God. And this glorious, great God who is so great, calls us to serve him. What a privilege. Calls us to rejoice in him, just like the lion whisperer rejoices in these lions. We're to rejoice in him. Serve the Lord. Believer, serve the Lord. Unbeliever, repent and serve the Lord. Rejoice with trembling. And verse 12. Okay, so first thing, be wise and heed the warning. Second thing, serve him with fear and trembling. Third, kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you perish in your way. For his wrath is quickly kindled. Or as the NIV puts it, kiss his Son or he will be angry and your way will lead you to your destruction. For his wrath can flare up in a moment. So here you've got a picture, kings of old. They would sit on their throne. And as you approach them, they would hold out their hand. And that was an invitation to you to kiss their hand. And this is saying, kiss the Son. In other words, right now, he sits on his throne and he holds out his hand. And And this is telling us, the psalmist is saying, look, in light of all these truths, kiss the Son. You imagine, in those days, you walk up to his hand and just like bat it away. You don't do that. You don't do that. Maybe you've done it and you think, well, I got away with it. His wrath can flare up in a moment. That means right now, not just in the future. He can. If you've batted away his hand and treated this king as if he's nothing, and nothing seems to have come of it, that is his grace. He's been merciful. But he extends his hand to you again. He says, and the wise thing to do is kiss his hand. To kiss his hand is to bow before him and acknowledge he is who he is. And to acknowledge that we are who we are, his subjects, his servants, that he is worthy of this honour. What that means for us as believers is this: we worship him. In fact, the word kiss, or the word for worship, the Greek word, one of the two Greek words, is proskinios. Pros means towards, kinios means to kiss. To worship God, it's kind of like to express our affection to him. And I love him. That's what we do in worship. Worship the Lord, kiss the Lord, bow before him. And then the conclusion of the psalm. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. Do you remember when John preached on Psalm 1? Psalm 1 begins with the words, blessed is the one. Psalm 2, which is very much connected with Psalm 1, finishes, blessed are all who take refuge in him. Do you remember what John said about blessed? Happy. Happy is the one. Happy are all who take refuge in him. That God is a refuge, what that means is this: he is a place of safety and security. He's the place where striving ceases. You think of all your battles in life. Think of the struggles that we all have, right? We all have various struggles. Maybe for you at the moment, you struggle against your own sin. We have real struggles that we think, why have I got this tendency to respond, and it makes my life hard and it makes other people's lives hard, and we wish that we could just put it away. We have this ongoing battle and struggle. Or maybe your struggle at the moment is with an external temptation, something that you think, I can't wait to get to glory when that temptation won't be there anymore. Or maybe your struggle is with another individual, other people, personalities. It just makes life very hard for you. Maybe it's a family member or something, I don't know. Maybe you struggle with your responsibilities in life, just trying to manage everything. And whatever it might be, the place of refuge, that's the place where all that struggling ceases. God. You know, that's why Jesus says, do not worry about anything. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. We all struggle in different ways, but when we come to him, there we find rest and peace from all of our struggles, even in this life. I often quote to myself anyway, I may not quote it that often to you, but that song, I need thee every hour, stay thou nearby, temptations lose their power when thou art nigh. It's true, isn't it? When God is close, everything else just finds its place. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. The one whom the nations rebel against, who will feel the weight of his fury, those people can find in that one, rather than judgment and fury, refuge and peace. So here's the opportunity. Will he be your refuge or your judge?